Welcome to The Legacy Shift, the podcast for cycle breaking mothers and conscious leaders raising liberated, legacy building children. I'm your host, Patricia Abdallah, TEDx speaker, generational healing guide, and mother of four on a mission to end inherited pain and parent with power. Each week, we'll dismantle generational patterns, reclaim your truth, and anchor into a new legacy, one that begins with you. You won't find perfection here, just healing, truth-telling, and the sacred work of becoming the parent your children don't need to heal from. Let's break the cycle together. Let's talk about the word that we throw around a lot as parents, disrespect. In today's episode, we're talking about how your child is not actually disrespectful, they're just dysregulated. Let's jump into today's episode. Maybe your child slams the door, throws something, stomps their feet, and then you feel yourself rising. And you look at that and you say, that is so disrespectful. But in that moment, they're actually not being disrespectful. They're being dysregulated. A lot of times as parents, we say in those moments, you need to learn to respect me. I know I've caught myself saying that several times. And it's something that has been said to me several times when I was a child. But it's not disrespect in those moments, it's dysregulation. So we need to reframe. What if what we call disrespect is actually dysregulation? What if what you're seeing isn't rebellion, it's distress, and it's your child's desire to be heard? So let's first jump into understanding what dysregulation is in regards to what respect looks like. So dysregulation is when the nervous system is so overwhelmed, it doesn't know how to behave. It's when emotions override any sort of logic. So to put this in a little bit into perspective, the child's brain does not fully develop until the age of 24 or 25. That is huge to understand because it means that our children don't have fully regulated brains yet. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. And it's something that they learn as they develop and grow. So emotions can override any sort of logic in those moments a lot faster than any adult. It's not defiance, it's a signal that your child's brain and body are just flooded. They're flooded. And it's our job as parents to help them understand why they're flooded and how we can support them in those moments of those emotions being so outbursting. I've been seeing this a lot more recently with my older kids. So when they talk back, for example, my oldest says, "Why? I'm not going to do that. You can't make me do that." And it drives me bonkers. I get so triggered when he says this. But I remind myself he's not challenging my authority. It's his nervous system telling me that I can't handle this right now. He doesn't know how to understand what was happening in that moment. He also doesn't understand yet how to respond in that moment. So it's easier for him to say, I'm not doing that, right? Another thing is my 8-year-old would talk back, for example, and he would say, well, I'm not doing that. He doesn't have to do that. And again, in those moments, I want to say, well, I'm to be respected. I'm the parent, but it's not that he doesn't respect. It's that he's dysregulated and doesn't understand the emotional capacity of that moment. So on the flip side, that's conversation, right? Those are words, and yes, words hurt and they can be disrespectful. But sometimes our children yell, or they storm off. So in those moments, they're communicating that they've lost any sense of safety and control. So what would trigger that and expand that explosiveness is if we respond in the same way. If we're yelling or storming off or saying things under our breath as parents, that actually increases the cortisol and increases their nervous system, and they will never understand in those moments how to regulate their emotions to feel safe. Like I said, I see this all the time in my kids. One minute they're fine, the next they're exploding. One minute they're happy, the next their tone changes and they have attitude with me. They say something I would have been punished for as a child. But the beauty of creating generational change and generational patterns and creating new legacy is that instead of looking at that as defiance, we can learn to look at it as a sense of communication. So let's talk about breaking the cycle of disrespect and how we can help change the cycle and change and shift the patterns of the quote unquote word of disrespect. Many of us may have been raised in homes where disrespect equals punishment, not conversation. I know I was personally. If I were to talk back, I would be punished. I'd be sent to my room. I'd had privileges taken away. So there was no communication around that disrespect, just that you're not behaving the way I want you to behave, so therefore you need to be punished. And I know I'm not alone in this. I've been in a lot of conversations now with a lot of different moms about their upbringing, and a lot of times I'm seeing that this cycle of disrespect equals punishment, it is changing, but it was the norm for when us as millennials were growing up, for example. So we learned to associate fear equals respect, right? I had a friend recently ask me, my kids were home for the day, and they were home from school for the day, and they were just off the walls. Okay, they were off the walls. They were very high energy. They were into everything, running around. They weren't listening at all. Um, which is completely fine, whatever. But I had a friend say, "Oh, can't your husband come out and say anything? Are they fearing? Are they fearful of him?" I said, "No, they're not fearful of him." And in that moment, I was like, well, this is why I'm doing the work I'm doing because it's not important. It's not necessary to have fear to equal respect, right? Respect, I'm finding as I'm growing as a parent, and as I have these 10 years of experience, respect is coming from hearing what they have to say. Respect comes from seeing them as a whole child. Respect comes from giving them support in those moments of weakness. Respect never comes from them feeling fear. You'll never get respect from feeling fear. But growing up, we were associating fear equals respect, right? So as cycle breakers, it's our job isn't to demand respect, it's to model it. How can I model respect back to my kids, right? When I'm feeling triggered or increased emotions, can I show them respect in those moments? And in those moments where they have their increased emotions, can I offer a safe place for them to land? We have to teach through connection, not control. So, this is one of the shifts I talked about last week in the podcast. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to the 7 shifts of conscious parents can make to raise liberated, free children. But one of the shifts is connection over control, right? We don't need to control our kids. We need to provide them a safe place to land. We need to provide them the ability to connect with us, not just when they're happy, not just when they have really great emotions, but also when they're feeling sad, angry, or frustrated. We need to give them the opportunity to express themselves. And us as cycle breaking parents and breaking the cycle of this term of disrespect, we allow that, right? We allow that. Respect is caught, not taught, okay? So, in breaking the cycle, a lot of breaking the cycle is understanding when you as a parent are getting triggered. It's not always easy when you're triggered to stop what you're doing and decide a different path. But if you can stop what you're doing and trigger check yourself, right? You parent then from regulation, not from dysregulation. And remember, disrespect is actually dysregulation. So if we can show our children and really model it to them that we are regulated in those moments, they'll eventually learn that regulation is safe, right? So when I feel myself getting triggered or when my child's tone hits that nerve, I pause. I pause. Instead of reacting, I offer opportunity. So a lot of times in those moments, if they say, well, I'm not doing that, or if they yell at me, I'll say, hey, bud, do you want to try again? And I give them an opportunity to realize, oh, hey, how I said that is probably not the best way to speak to somebody. I had a lot of attitude in that. Let me try again. So it's not about being perfect. It's allowing them to have mistakes, right? And in those mistakes, that's where they learn and they grow. And in those mistakes, we can show up with love to allow them to feel safe to make those mistakes. But nobody's perfect, right? Us as adults, we're not perfect. So why are we expecting our children to be perfect? They're going to be dysregulated at moments in their life. They're going to have big feelings. They're going to have increased nervous systems. And when we get triggered as parents and we feed into those triggers, it's just showing them that dysregulation isn't something that we talk about or isn't safe to be, right? I'll say all the time, over and over and over, my best line is, do you want to try that again? Right? Another thing I learned, I think on Instagram was when they're very dysregulated or they're being quote unquote disrespectful, I'll be like, hey guys, who am I? And then they'll say, your mom. And how do you speak to me? And they reply, with kindness. And then I say, do you want to try again? So that's the longer version of that. You're more than welcome to take this model and this tool with you anywhere you want. But hey, bud, who am I? And then they realize, oh, that's my mom. And how are you supposed to speak to me? With kindness. And then do you want to try again? Sure. Can I have that cup of water? I see this a lot of time with my 5-year-old, who, again, I've spoken about this before, but he's a really big feeling kid, okay? And a lot of times right away, he'll just react, right? React, react, react. So, for instance, this morning, Mommy, get me a cup of water. I'm sorry? Get me a cup of water. Okay, bud, do you want to try that again? Get me a cup of water. One more time. Mommy, can you please get me a cup of water? Fabulous. I can get you a cup of water now. Do you see, in that moment, I didn't model, don't speak to me like that. You're supposed to treat me with respect. I never said that. I had him understand in those moments that he can self-regulate himself, right? Like it's not my job to be able to, it's my job to give him the tools to regulate himself, but it's not my job to force him into fearing me or making him feel unwell about being dysregulated. So I tell my kids this sometimes, and this is why the do you want to try again works. I tell my kids, I see that you're upset, but you have another chance to express yourself. It also gives me time to stay grounded, right? So in that moment that I just showed with my, so in that moment that I just shared with my 5-year-old, when I say, hey, bud, what did you say? Do you want to try again? And again, it allows me to be more grounded and have that regulation. And then it honestly, they get tired of hearing it, right? Do you want to try again? Do you want to try again? Do you want to try again? They get tired of hearing it. So that's why they get it the first time, second time, or third time. When you first start this, you may have to say it several times over and over and over again, but it does get extremely boring. And sometimes that's what kids need. Oh, here goes mom again saying, do you want to try again? Like, so it's like it's something that they learn to expect, but also allows them the pause to regulate themselves. So, like I said, we all make mistakes when we're dysregulated. I do, you do, our kids do. And we can't expect our kids to handle their emotions perfectly when we as adults don't do that. And we still lose it sometimes, right? So that was a lot thrown at us about breaking the cycle and a tool that you can use. But what about guiding through that regulation, right? What happens when our kids are just really upset and angry or they're talking back or being disrespectful? So some tools that we can use to help guide through that regulation is co-regulate. So that can look like sitting beside them. You can touch them on their body somewhere if they're comfortable with it. I like to like rub an arm or hold a hand or even put like a hand on their thigh. Lower your voice and just breathe together, right? Like that's so beautiful. Put your hand on them, regulate yourself, and show them what breathing looks like. The other thing we can do is name the emotion. Hey, bud, I see that you're really frustrated right now. And they may say, yeah, I am really frustrated. Or no, I'm not frustrated. I'm XYZ. So now we're naming the emotions, right? Another thing we can do is normalize mistakes. So I talked a little bit about this. Nobody's perfect. It's okay to feel upset. You can say, it's okay to feel upset. Let's find another way to talk about it. Another thing I say in terms of if they are violent, of like yelling or hitting or whatever that looks like, I always say it's okay to have those big feelings. However, it is not okay to hurt somebody in those big feelings, right? So I'm attempting to teach them, and it's a long journey. I'm not there yet, but I'm attempting to teach them that, hey, the feelings are okay. The actions of hurting or breaking something in the house are not okay, right? So correcting with a calm tone helps them realize that they're dysregulated without any attachment of shame. And that's so important. We don't want our kids to feel bad that they had a big blow up, right? They're learning, they're growing, and it's our job to give them the safe space to do what they need to do. How can we reframe what respect looks like? Respect isn't about silence, obedience, or the perfect tone. It's about the relationship and it's about the mutual trust between you and your child. Right? So changing patterns is one thing, but the way to change that is understanding your relationship with your child is more important than someone's opinion on how you're dealing with their outburst. I'm going to say that again. Your relationship with your child is more important than someone else's judgment on what you're doing to help regulate your child. And I'm saying this with such sincerity because this is something I had so much challenge with when I first became a mom. And I only recently, within the last couple of years, really stepped into the I don't give a you know what about other people's opinions on how I'm choosing to regulate my child, right? So a lot of the cycle breaking of the you're disrespecting me, go to your room, we're still seeing that play out in some parenting narratives today. And that's where the judgment would come in that if you're attempting to regulate your child in an environment where there's other people watching, you may feel judgment and you may feel like you have to revert back to how you were raised in order to feel accepted. Let's not do that anymore. Respect isn't about silence, it's about relationship and it's about mutual trust. When we react with reactivity, we teach fear. We don't want to teach fear. We want to respond with regulation. We want to teach emotional safety. And that's the foundation of true respect. Giving them the safe environment, the safe place to land, and the safe place to feel their feelings. All right, let's summarize this and wrap up this podcast episode. Next time your child, quote unquote, disrespects you, pause. That's all you need in changing patterns. Ask yourself, are they being defiant in this moment or are they actually dysregulated? Another key that I want to throw in here that I haven't mentioned yet is sometimes when your child is dysregulated, you can look in their face and look it in their eyes and see if they're dysregulated. I can see it on my kids all the time. If I look in their eyes, it's almost like their eyes are just wild. Right? They can't focus or anything like that, or their eyes are red, or they're just like so angry. Like I can see it in their eyes. So that's a really key area where you can look at your child, look at them in the eyes and see, are you dysregulated or are you being defiant, right? The shift doesn't happen overnight. I'm going to be honest. It's taken me years to get to this point. It takes unlearning generations upon generations of parenting, but every time that you choose regulation instead of reacting, you're breaking the cycle. And that's what this is all about, breaking generational patterns so we can leave a legacy our children are so proud of. So if this episode spoke to you, please, I ask you to take a moment to subscribe, rate, and share it with another cycle breaking parent. If you're ready to go deeper into this work, I have a free mini course called the Legacy Reset. It is absolutely free, valued at $297, but I'm gifting it to you because I believe in healing our homes, and I believe that it starts with us. The link is in the show notes or down below. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will see you next week for next week's episode. If this episode spoke to your soul, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more cycle breakers like you find this movement. And if you're ready to go deeper, I have a special gift for you. The Legacy Reset mini course I'm offering you completely free. This is valued at $297. Inside, you'll learn the exact steps to start breaking generational cycles and resetting your family's legacy. You can grab it now through the link in the show notes. You'll also find my free guide, Breaking the Cycle, 7 Shifts Every Conscious Parent Must Make. Until next time, keep healing, keep leading, and keep rewriting the story for generations to come.